part that we had done. I'm going to Alt O to bring open the Operations Manager. And in this case, as you guys see, we have that operations we went through before. Now what I'd like, yes, sir. Dang it. Okay. You know, he's a little picky, this. You know, that's an easy fix. How's that? Okay, good. So as I was stating, I brought back up our solid part, and here's our operations that we had gone through and looking at from last week, where we were looking at the posting issues, and not issues, but actually combinations that we could create from last week. But one thing we never did do is just, you know, sometimes you like to have that visual and how the part wants to sit. So I'm going to Alt-O and close the Operations Manager so I got a little bit more screen area. And what I've got is I've got a Kurt Vise with all parallels already on it and everything like that. I'd like to bring that file and merge that file into this one. And then I want to orientate, for example, as our Op1 going down here to the view sheets. There would be our Op1. And of course, I'd like to see that levels. Bring that over real quickly here. I'd like to see the stock turned on. And I want to be able to set this up in the Vise. In that Vise. But actually what we're going to do is, because we've already gone through and programmed the part, I don't want to physically move the part, but I sure would like to physically move the Vise. So I think I've got somewhat of a simpler way to actually do that using our Dynamic Xform like we did with our Dynamic WCS. So let's go ahead and start off with bringing that file in. So I'm going to go File and File Merge. So what I'm looking for is in that directory I have in here, I should have a Kurt 6-inch vise, by the way. And if this is not up, I'll make sure that's up there. This actually is a true, this is from Kurt, and is a true Kurt vise, 6-inch vise, one of their models. Okay, in this case, for one thought, it's over here. Well, I thought it was going to be flipped upside down. Make it more fun, but it's okay. I'm going to do something real quickly. As I look at select a new location, edit options and scale, rotate, mirror, use current attributes, for example. I'm going to go ahead because I want to move this over. So what I'm going to use is this button here to select, and it says select a position of the pattern position. I was going to left click over here on the screen and just move that over there for one thought. And oh, for fun, why not? Let's go ahead and see if we can flip that part so it's off in a weird access and stuff. So good, we'll go ahead and leave it like that. So it's totally off access and everything, so we can move this around. If it was upside down, it would still be a good point. I'm going to go ahead and say OK and accept that. So now what I've done is brought in this vise, and on the inside of the vise, sorry, thought came through my head. I hate when that happens. Device. And I'm going to bring open the level manager, and we can see that since I already had it created on different levels, and I actually had set up for level set being different parts, for example, removable jaws, different pieces of the part. And what I've done is I've created a level set configuration here so that I can actually right click over here on level set and turn off the entire vise except for the parallels. Oh, where's my screws are not in there. Hate when that happens. So let's look to see what level those screws are supposed to be on. So using that the arrow button down here, I'll select one of these in this case, and that's being the solid body down here in 200. So that actually, let's go ahead and select stock, for example. That shuts those off. I'm actually going to go ahead and do is I'm going to actually move those over. Those should be up here with our vise. Let's see which part of the vise I like it to be with. Here, I'll put it with the base. So the base would be 207. So I'm going to actually select, these are here, the bolts. I'm going to right click and say cut, and I'm going to come up to this one here, base, right click and say paste. So now it should work, is that when I go ahead and shut off that geometry, here it is, base 207, that the screws are with it. and that other level is no longer there. So bringing that back on, Vise on, bringing my parallels. My parallels should have been part of that, but I could have actually separated those. So we have some parallels already sitting in the system. Now I'm going to go ahead and close that manager. So with the Dynamic Xform. Oh, come on, Jim, kill me tonight. Just kick me in, and we'll just call it a night. You know. Uh, oh well. Okay, so what I'd like to do is I'd actually like, as you can see, I got the parallel. I'd like right here, for example, this corner right here. I'd like that corner lined up, of course, this along the X, top of this, with, of course, this intersection of the part here on that. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is up here at Xform, I got Dynamic Xform. So Dynamic Xform, first thing it's asked me is select the entities to move or copy. So in this case, I'll just put a window around these. And I'm going to say, of course, the end selection. And now what I've got is I've got this gnomon, just like you see with Dynamic WCS, but this gnomon in this configuration is asking for pick a gnomon origin position. So now in that case, what I'm looking for is this particular part, and I'd like to stick it right here at the endpoint on that. Now, using the way the configuration is now, is that as soon as I went ahead, before I selected that, it was actually toggled to up here in the left-hand corner. It says manipulate axis, and then we have manipulate geometry. So the first thing that comes when you first come in, the gnomon is active, and you can see when I pull down my arrow, you can see the 3-axis logo, the icon next to my cursor. Where of course, once I've selected that position, it automatically toggles over to manipulate geometry. So in this case, I'm going to show you how to do this configuration to put the vise where we want it, and then I'm going to show you another main reason for this actual tool too. But this is one of the thoughts I like to really use this for quite often, because a lot of time I use the dynamic WCS to reorientate my part, but sometimes I actually need to physically move it. But we'll go back to that thought. So right now, manipulate by geometry. We have the option to move or copy. In this case, I'm going to move it. In this case, I have multiple or a single, and then I can say how many. Then we have these tools being move to origin, and do you want it to go to the WCS origin, world origin, C plane origin, tool plane origin, and then working with the axes, and the same option there being align with the axis. But we're not going to actually use that for this particular tool. Because now what I can do is I can actually physically grab like this location here, since it's set for geometry. If I left click where the ball is, I can physically move it. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, wow, it's kind of loud out there. I'm going to actually go ahead and manipulate this and turn it 90 degrees. Now with that being aligned 90 degrees, and if it wasn't aligned with this, I'll be able to still do that later on, is I can actually take this point right here and set it right there on the end point of my geometry. So I'm going to zoom in right here so you can see. I'm going to go ahead and select on the end point of that tool right there. So we can see that the part is now sitting in the vise, and I can go ahead and green check. Alright, click and clear colors. So now you can see is we're still picking up our material from up here, but we are now sitting with our part aligned on top of the part. I mean underneath the part. On top, on the bottom, who cares? I know. Derek's going to look at this video one of these and go, what the heck? But we can take, and you can see I can manipulate geometry and actually drag it and put it where I want it with the other existing geometry. Now where it comes a little tricky is that, of course, now we set that up for op1. Now what about when it comes to op2 is we can see that op2, the vise is actually in the wrong location. Because that's the one limitation here, is that for setup for the other ones, you're going to have to copy this vise to another level and then set that up with the orientation for that particular level, that part, for the next operation. So for example, in this case, we're looking at this intersection here. So what I would probably want to do is Alt O, bringing up, nope, sorry, I didn't need that. Alt Z. Jim, can you hear the mower? Oh, good. It's really loud here. I can actually grab, for example, this through here by holding the Shift key down. Whoop. Hold that. Through Shift. Get that. Oh, let's do it here. Sorry, I know what's happening is I'm getting multiple turn-ons at the time. There to here. There we go. Sorry, here's a thought for you, is that you'll notice that it kept turning on and off because I can actually grab multiple levels, for example, like this, and say Shift and hold the other ones and automatically turn them all off. So if I hold Shift here and then hold the Shift key and grab the other ones, you'll see it turns them all on. So where you grab in this section, being visible, name, for example, or entities, or level set, or number, you have different options. For example, number, this line here, whatever I select is going to automatically make that the active level here at the bottom of the screen for anything that I build from here out. Visible, of course, turns on and off geometry that's active or non-active on your screen. Names, of course, gives you the names of the profile. And also when I go to grab, you'll see how it acts different too. Entities will follow the same as the name. But level set, of course, as you saw earlier, defines that I can actually group multiple levers together that I can turn on and off and use. But what I wanted to do is that, okay, for example, I'm going to go ahead and create 5,000. And I'll say, am I using that? 2D profile? Oh, I am using that one. So let's make that 5,100, and we'll call copy 1 of Vise. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is that I would like to grab this and these ones, but I'm going to grab from looking under the name view here. So I came along this part of the column. Now when I let go of my Shift key, you can see it grabbed them all. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say copy. I'm going to come down to here, highlight that one, and right click and say paste. You see I got 22 entities. So I can select off everything else and it followed the default colors. Oh, it also grabbed my part, looks like. I didn't need a copy of that. Let me see here. Let's verify where that came in. Okay, it's on that same level. Didn't need that. Hopefully I still have my solid part up here. Uh-oh. See what you did? And bring that back. And that should have been... Oh, I copied that over too. That moved that. That's why. Alright. That's no problem. I can move that back. So that would have been... Solid body was 200. So I'm going to right click on that. I'm sorry. Right click and right click on level. And let's put this for 200. I'll take that for 200. That. Right click. 9. That was 9, right? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it was 9. I didn't want that. 8. Let's go with 8. So shutting off that. Okay, so now we've made a copy of that Vise, of course, and then what it did is it looked at the colors earlier that I had when it made the copy and changed everything to that color. So I could go back in there and change the colors, but the idea is I needed to create another Vise configuration that I could share with that to be able to actually set up the multiple different operations. So what I wanted to show is you can see is I was able to grab multiple levels and just copy them all over to one level if I wanted to, or I could have actually made multiples, but in this case, just for visual, we'll go with the one. We'll do one more configuration can set up to see. So with that said, turning on my stock on that, making sure that I am set by right-clicking, going to View Manager that I've added, and Opt to. Make sure that's all set. That's good. So that when I isometric, we can see that, of course, that is set on the wrong view on that. So we want to go ahead and be able to actually set that at the intersection of these 2 points where it's actually flipped over. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and close that, and using the Dynamic Xform on that, I'm going to go ahead and use this nice button QM level, and I'm going to say copy of solid. So that grabbed everything for me on that. What I know I'm looking for again is that, of course, this edge here needs to sit at the bottom of this intersection here. So I'm going to go ahead and select that, and of course maybe turning off that other part if I need to. I can also not have this shaded. You can see how it's actually translucent. If I go into here into settings, I can actually say use translucent shading and not have it shaded. And now select my point where I'd like to have that intersection meet. Making sure that's my endpoint. My endpoint there. Now we're starting to look at that. Okay, how do we want to flip that? That automatically toggled this over to manipulate. And let's just pull that away for a second. So we've got this like that. So I know that I need to flip that vise over for one thought. Still coming from that location. So again, selecting that. And of course looking for my origin position. And I'm going to still have to make one modification to this copy of the vise, because another thing that changes visually. So if I say okay, we got the part sitting in there actually on the physical part, because remember we machined the outside of the part already. On that we'd have excess stock. Of course is that we need to now clear colors. We need to take this piece. So actually we should have moved this against the hard jaw. Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, that should have been rotated around. We should have had this position right here actually sitting against that corner, and then we need to take the soft jaw here and move that in. So what we can do in that case is we'll go back and actually flip that again, because right now that should be sitting with this corner turned around. We got that vise backwards. That's vice backwards or ass backwards. Kind of go together on that. So selecting and selecting again on that. I'm going to say OK. And of course this parallel actually lines up a little better too. Selecting that. I'm going to go ahead and move that around. We need to go a little bit farther there. So we can go ahead and bring this back 90 degrees. And select the ball. And place that. So moving around to the origin when you see that mark. Apply that. So we see the parts flipped around. It is sitting against the hard jaw. So I'll right click and clear colors. In this case, so here we go this and that, and let's make that this color. The base, let's make it a pretty blue. That, and this, that, and that, that origin there, and we'll make those that color too. So I should make these two just that visual thought. Different color real quickly there. So now of course what we're going to need to do is move this jaw, that jaw, and that piece. So here, that, and of course these follow on that when you move along. So what I'm going to use is that I'll use that same tool. Why not? The Dynamic Xform. So all I'm doing is telling it, okay, is that I want, oops, let's move that a little bit closer there. The endpoint here. There we go. Now automatically toggle over to that. So I can actually take this and just drag this along linear to this position till it finds the edge of my part. So for example, reflecting off the top of there, I'll left click. Oh, didn't bring the bolts. But you can see I can actually manipulate and drag that along. Shift that down and go ahead and grab those two jaws. And of course, now you don't see it, but I know we saw it when we started to move everything. So I remove the solid part there, and I unshade that my two screws don't line up. So I can do the Dynamic Xform, or in this case too, I could just select each bolt in there. On that, what I'm looking at is standard Xform and translate if I'd like. Xform, translate. And I'm going to say move. Select to a point. So the center of this to the center of that. So as we can actually see through here, because I got that parallel and that level there, they actually line up like they're supposed to inside the vise. But I could use that tool, as you can see, to drive that and clear that up. So turning my levels back on, bringing the part back up, and Alt S for shade, and turning off that. So what now I can do is that this is set up for here. Let's go ahead and set this for isometric, how that would sit. I don't know what this point is here. Let's remove it. Alt F1. I'm going to right click and say Save View Shape Bookmarks. Going back to Op1, we can see now I've got multiple, brought up both of them. So in that case, I'm going to Alt Z and turn off my secondary vise, because there's my first vise and my stock. So this shows like this. And I'm going to go ahead at that point and update this view. So I should be able to go Op2 and see where it's now coming from that location, and Op1 with the stock turned on and the part sitting from that configuration with this origin. So you can see that the Xform Dynamic gives you an option to actually take and manipulate standard geometry. So let's take it where